I don't know. There's not anything necessarily that we have to. There's no policy. We just do what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you want. Do what we want. Now, hold on a sec. Let me make sure here we're not blowing out everybody's eardrums. Oh, not blowing out everyone's eardrums, so we can proceed. Because that was awful to find out last time after the fact. That was so. Well, welcome. Thank you for bearing with us. We kind of came on slowly there because last week I know some of you had mentioned we had some audio issues, which there were settings, or not last week, the week before, there were settings, different directions from our Collegians Live program. Came right into this, and it just, I completely forgot to change a couple of different settings. So my apologies for that. But welcome back. It is Thursday. It's noon. It's time for an unauthorized caucus. And last week we said goodbye to Mr. Andrew Muller, who's been guest hosting, co-hosting with us for some months now, but we welcome back a familiar face. Andrew is gone. Andrew is off to better and greater pursuits, I guess you could call it. But Mason, Mr. Mason Mohan, who I think you might remember if you were with us last summer watching it all, is back with us. Not for the summer, though.
Right.
Permanently. So welcome back, Mason. How are you doing? What's been going on with you?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I was on 2 or 3 times, I think, last summer.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm no longer the intern or the little buddy, as everybody called me.
I didn't. Who called you that? I didn't call you that.
Everybody called me that.
I didn't call him that. To be fair, I did not call.
Now I'm the big buddy. They call me the big buddy now.
The big buddy.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back and joining on a weekly basis or semi-weekly basis.
We'll leave that up to a vote of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
What if they vote you off?
You can't vote me off.
Okay.
When I'm the one who holds the account, I guess you just have the power over that kind of thing.
Oh, man.
Don't worry. If you all vote me off, we'll find a few thousand extra votes at the latest hour of the election, and we'll just throw them in there. But
yeah.
I'm kidding, YouTube. I'm kidding. Don't black the video. I'm just joking. But yeah, Mason's back with us permanently. I'm happy to have you here. I think it'll be a good addition, and I'm looking forward to getting into a lot of good stuff. But today, we had something that we had talked about. Okay, what do we want to talk about? And I think that, well, I think you and I probably have a lot of plans of like some issues that we'll want to get into and actually dive in. I know as we were talking about, this was not just passing headlines, but what are some of the issues that conservatives, especially 2023, 2024, I know that, now that you're here full time, we're going to start having some good hallway conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the whole principle here with Unauthorized Caucus is just, let's have some good hallway conversations. Like, what are the things we need to be talking about? And there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into, but there's something this week particularly that we wanted to mention. It ties in very directly with what we're doing. And a lot of the stuff that you see with the radio program and some of the others, which this is the first reminder, by the way, if you are not subscribed, wherever you are, hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Share this with a friend. Let them know this is a conversation. They should come in on here, the lunch break for the next few minutes. But go to, first and foremost, phyllisschlafly.com. The little pop-up banner will sign you up for the email list. Go and put your name and email down for me, because not only do we get notified when this is coming out, but you will see all of the other stuff that we do. And one of the regular drum beats of that, when you sign up for the what you need to know emails, you'll see a lot of other stuff throughout the week at phyllisschlafly.com. One of the main things you'll see is the radio show, the Pro America Report that Ed hosts. I get to hop on and co-host sometimes. But one of our regular guests and one of the regular issues we talk about is Todd Bensman and the border. Center for Immigration Studies, Todd Bensman is the senior fellow for national security there at CIS, and he's kind of our regular immigration and border correspondent. And he talks about everything sovereignty related and this, that. But he is based in Texas, which welcome from Texas via Hillsdale to here, by the way. We have Texas representation. I know this is a big pride factor for everyone. So
yes.
The real Pride Month, Texas
Pride
12 months of the year.
Yes.
Yeah, 12 months of the year. But Todd being in Texas always has kind of the most up-to-date information. Like all the videos of him are great. I mean, he's slogging through the rivers, like going to the other side, interviewing people. He's on the migrant camp side in Mexico. Like you want to know what's happening. It's not Todd's opinion. Todd's out there filming it and coming back and saying, here's what I saw, here's what they said. And it really is one of the things we talk about. This is like the great humanitarian crisis of our day here on our borders, because this is just, free reign. Like we said in the email promo for this, the cartels literally have free reign. They do whatever they want. They're ruling the border right now. And I don't think that any law enforcement agent would disagree with that. An honest one. Like, that's just, it's chaos down there.
Right.
Like, we don't have control of our southern border. As a native Texan, I mean, we just in the hallway briefly, but like, what's your perspective on that? Is there any light you can shed on that? Do people actually know down there? Do they have the same opinion as that, or is it kind of unknown and it's hidden over? What do you think?
Well, unless you know somebody or have family in the border security, most people don't find out about it. Most people don't know what's going on. The news doesn't push it very hard, especially in a place like Austin or Houston or Dallas, a big city with liberal media. Your local news is going to be very liberal. But things like El Paso, when El Paso started blowing up, everybody heard about that because, oh, there's a giant influx of immigrants. And the governor, Greg Abbott, is pretty good about talking about the border crisis, emphasizing that it's an issue that needs to be resolved. But when it comes down to it, there's only so much the state government can do when the federal government is marching so hard in the other direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing right now. And that's one of the things that Todd talks about, which I'll post his website real quick here below. If you want to know what's going on down at the border, Todd Bensman is probably, I would say, the foremost source, and he understands it's not just what's happening. This is being allowed or even made to happen. Like, this is according to, no borders globalist policy. Let's just rip off all of the securities down here and free reign. Whoever wants to come in can come in. I mean, and look at the, if you've studied at all what's happened in Europe as a result of the European Union, once you get across the EU border, man, you're in any country you want. You can just flood all the way from one side to the other. It's not, well, it's dangerous. I mean, if you're not, there's no way to protect that one, border for a whole host of nations, for an entire continent. It's hard enough on one country, but you have to lock it down and control who comes in and do a vetting process. And the Biden administration is doing the exact opposite of that, trying to cause chaos. There's no other way to, it's not impugning motives. There's just no other way to interpret what they're doing.
Right.
But the thing is, this often gets kind of shoved in my mind. I think we all agree. This often kind of gets shoved into the, oh, well, that's a right-wing issue. Y'all are worried about the border. You're worried about, you don't like immigrants. No, actually, it's out of caring for people. It's my humanity. It's my Christianity that drives me to say, this is awful. There has to be a giant wall and certain ways that you come in where we vet this, because when it's all open, no holds barred, anyone can come in for any reason. All of a sudden we see what we're seeing. It's not just that they're running drugs and guns and drugs and everything across the border. There's human trafficking at a disturbing scale that we've never seen before. And I mean, not only, and this is what we're going to tie it into here, is a project that's talking about that. Not only do we bring children across the border to be used and sold into slavery, but children are used to bring other people across the border. We sign up as a fake parent because if I have kids, I can get in a lot easier, both for the getting in and to get them in. Like, literally, millions of children across the world are involved in this, and hundreds of thousands of them probably have over the last few years come across the border back and forth. This is an everyone issue. This isn't a right-wing thing or a left-wing thing. This is a humanity issue. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand the extent of that, and why, as conservatives, and I hate to, compassionate conservatives, an awful phrase. That's got a lot of ties into other things. I'm not trying to do that, but I mean, this is really a human issue that needs to be understood by a lot of people. And that's where we wanted to dive into something. So as we're going through this, by the way, if you have something that you want brought up, throw it into the chat. I see a couple of folks here, our friends at the Love of Life podcast, who we've had one of their hosts on a couple of our programs before. I went and joined them once. I see they're on there. Thank you guys for being there. Jesse and Courtney, great people who are also having good discussions. You should go and look them up. But as we're going through here, let me do this. The Sound of Freedom movie, and this is an organization you should be familiar with if you're not. We've been talking and listening to this this morning. There's a movie that just came out July 4 called The Sound of Freedom. Jim Caviezel stars in it. He was one of the driving forces behind getting this done. Angel Studios is they're the ones who are putting this out and distributing it nationwide. And it actually opened to a pretty big bang. I'll save that though. I've got another article there. What it is, the sound. Pause as I get you all this link. Go take a look. So what this is telling the real story of a man named Tim Ballard. who started an organization called OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. And basically, the short version, he was a Department of Homeland Security agent, or Department of Homeland Services. Oh my goodness, DHS is completely gone.
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security. I thought so. Wow, that just there's too many alphabet agencies. This is DHS agent. He was tasked on a lot of their pedophile digital task forces, and brought down people who were running child sex rings or who were transferring this stuff around the internet. But the actual going and rescuing children in foreign nations out of trafficking situations, out of sex slavery. It's like, well, you can't do this as a DHS agent. So he quit his job and founded this place. So that's literally what they do. They put together missions. It's not the US government doing it. It's a private entity, and they go and rescue children. And this movie, The Sound of Freedom, depicts his life in this transition, showing him realizing this is what we need to do to go and save children, and essentially combat and try to end human trafficking altogether, sex slavery across the world, which is millions and millions of children. And it really is, the more that you go down into it, it's not, teenagers. We're talking about, 3 and 4 and 5 year olds and up. And it gets pretty dark very quickly. But this is an incredible thing that they're doing. I mean, it's apparently a pretty hard movie to watch, but what they're asking for is for 2 million people to buy tickets, get into the theater, to represent and stand up for the 2 million children, I think they have estimates of, that are currently in sex slavery around the world, and bring awareness to this so that people understand how deep the rabbit hole goes and who knows about it, what we can do about it. And this isn't a government conspiracy thing. This is anyone who would be involved in this. We need to understand how deep this goes. And for us, part of it is the southern border. This is the thing we talk about a lot, but this is so very connected in to that issue. Too many alphabet agencies. Fact check, true. The fact checkers have said, ladies and gentlemen, true. So that's the link that I've posted down here below. Go watch the trailer, see what they're doing with the movie. I think that they've sold 1.4 million of their 2 million so far. It opened on July 4th and went beyond Indiana Jones, the new and hopefully not awful. I had high hopes for it to be awful, the new Indiana Jones, but I'm hearing it was actually pretty good. So
really?
The excited youth in me wants to be excited for that. But Sound of Freedom beat out the brand new Indiana Jones movie, which beating Disney movies isn't hard anymore. But Indiana Jones, you figure, in the July 4 box offices. So this is gaining attention, and that's the whole point. So I've got a couple of links down here that I'd like everyone. But it's really interesting to hear the people who want this issue to be understood. And this is where before we post it, I want to get your take on it. You and I both were going through, just released this week, Dr. Jordan Peterson's podcast. He actually had on Jim Caviezel, who I've seen do a lot of interviews about this, but they also had on Tim Ballard, the real guy behind it, talking about the issue. And I'm going to post the article. I want to get your take on it, though, because you've listened to it almost in its entirety, and I'm almost done with it. It's really fascinating, and I appreciate Jordan Peterson's honesty in talking about the topic, because he brings the clinical side to it, but also doesn't pull punches on truth and connecting the dots to, the biblical history of everything here and sin nature, which of course we're pretty unashamed. It's political stuff we do around here, but everything that we have is driven by Christian principles and scripture to an extent. At least we're not going down to the doctrine of it, but this is what society has been based upon. Christian heritage, we've talked about it a lot through the Declaration. Side note, if you didn't go back, listen to all of the stuff before July 4th and listen to Declaration Independence Day, and you'll see it. We're connected into our Christian heritage. But anyway, listening to the video, I don't know. I just want to get your take on it, because I'm really enjoying. I hate to say enjoy; it's not the right word, but it's very interesting, and I think it is something that I listen to this and I say, I don't think hardly anyone I know, even who is kind of tuned into what's going on, really understands the depths of depravity and how widespread this is. I don't think people get it. I don't know, what do you take away from this?
It's absolutely shocking, the things they talk about, and how Ballard, he discusses how he actually records all of his missions, and they release them sometimes, and he puts some of them on Twitter. I imagine some of them get pretty gruesome, but it's to show this isn't a conspiracy theory. I'm actually here doing this. He has, government people, he has journalists come out and actually go on the missions with them and see what's happening. And what's interesting is even despite all that transparency, people still say like right-wing conspiracy theorists, all these things, and it's confusing. Like why is it a political issue? Why is saving children from child trafficking a political issue? Like the left makes it a political issue, and that's what we need to understand, that this is already a political issue for the left, because we're seeing the contemporary sexual liberation movement talk about normalizing things like minor attracted persons, which are just pedophiles, horrible people. You're seeing, I think recently, the first transgender mayor in the United States, or state rep, jailed on child porn charges.
Yeah.
This is a political thing for them. And Jordan actually talks about in that interview that lots of French intellectuals, the postmodernists back in the 60s, were pushing for the age of consent to be lowered, except for one. Jean Baudrillard didn't, but the rest of them, names that you've probably heard, like Michel Foucault, those people were signing petitions trying to get it lowered. This has been a thing for the left. This is part of sexual liberation. If they're going to push for children to mutilate themselves in the way that they've been doing, and the way that's legal in way too many places now, it's just makes sense that they're going to keep on pushing for the increased sexualization of children, which is disgusting and terrible. But conservatives are like, they just assume that this is such an obvious moral issue, such an obvious moral solution is to just say no to this. So they don't think it's a political fight, where it actually is. These people are really pushing the limits with what's acceptable in society, far past what should ever be acceptable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have, well, I think that this ties in incredibly, I think that this ties in well to a lot of the stuff that we've talked about recently, that this is a very specific attack on the family unit. This is a very specific attack on the Christian values that the Western world has held, all our society and others before us as well. And I think that there's a very concerted effort, and this is what I think, what as conservatives we need to understand. There's a very concerted effort specifically to break down these institutions. So whether it's the sexualization of children through schools, whether it's this transgender radical ideology, whether it's normalizing pedophilia or hiding in the background and continuing the trait, like this kind of thing, when I say they, forces forces that are looking to, well, take our nation and others in opposite directions of where we are now, and which for us, I mean, we're going to go right back down and say, this is the evil one. This is the snake from the garden, whispering in the ears of all of these people, individuals at a computer screen, or people who are, leading things from across the globe and giant multinational industries. This is just absolutely, this is all connected, and this is all very, I don't know. It's all a tangled web.
It is.
Like, this is all a tangled web, and this is very much on purpose. I think this is something we all need to understand. There is a very, oh man, I'm at a loss for words. It's just, I've been too deep into some of this stuff already this morning, and it's very disturbing when you get to the side of it, because you see the evil that people will do to one another, but to do it to children is just, it's a hard thing to swallow. But I think this is one of the, and let me post this. Jordan Peterson made one comment that I think kind of sums up this whole thing, and it's what we all need to remember. And again, we live in a world of people who want to secularize everything and make it not necessarily the religious side or the religious argument that it is. But this goes back to Cain and Abel. This goes back to jealousy, pride, anger, and what you're willing to do when you go down that road of feeding yourself and selfishness and pride. And this is, from the very powerful that we see, people enriching themselves at the national level, like Nancy Pelosi. Maybe some of these people are involved in this kind of stuff too. It's not just enriching themselves, but satiating whatever pleasures they have. I mean, that's, when it's a conspiracy theory that hits pop culture, something like, the rich have with weird,
Hmm.
with weird religious services and occult things.
Right.
If it's so well known that it's a pop culture reference, it's probably not a conspiracy theory
Exactly.
anymore. But I mean, when you look across this is all traceable back to one thing: the corruption away from the natural order that God set down,
Hmm.
that we have followed throughout societies for centuries, for millennia, really.
Hmm.
And I mean, obviously, there's been perversion in the world before now,
Hmm.
but to see it and to witness it again, we have to realize where this has come from and what the truth is. There is a right and a wrong here, and this is where we divide the line down. But there's a long history that I think we need to be honest about and understanding, and this is a good thing for conservatives to remember, because we've got, and this is where I was going before I got distracted. I'm sorry. As a father of small kids, this really is like this is getting to me a little bit. And side note, you should go see the film. We're going to this weekend, my wife and I. We don't really want to necessarily on one level, but I think we should, and I want to support it. But looking at this stuff, I think that there's an incredible amount of understanding that as conservatives, looking at this next election cycle, looking at our party where it is now, we really are a big tent party. The Republican Party, but I mean the conservatives, we really are a big tent thing. Our side of the political equation allows for freedom. So what was it? Phyllis Schlafly said, "You're allowed to hold the position. You're allowed to hold my position for the reason of your choice. I don't care, as long as you support the same thing as me. You could be a political ally of mine. Great, but this doesn't mean that we agree, because we're not coming at it from the same perspective. And I think that's one of the warnings for conservatives. We got a lot of allies who are conservative on some things. Maybe the traditional. I say traditional. We've heard for a long time. Oh, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal. Well, how conservative are you though?
Right.
Because where is that fiscal value coming from of conservatism? Because I know where mine comes from. But if we differentiate on abortion and marriage policy and this and that, but we agree on fiscal, where are you pulling your principles from?
Right.
Because we're probably coming from different positions. That I'm not saying we can't be political allies in this fight for free speech or for sound financial policy, but I need to be aware as a conservative, we may not agree on some of the big fundamentals. So I should be wary of that, because we're going to hit a point where we're going to have to deal with an issue and you might not be on my side anymore. So be careful who your friends are. Not that you shouldn't have allies, but just be careful. I think this is one of those issues that's a warning, because as we look back across everything, there are a lot of people who, oh, well, of course we should leave children alone. But why? Why do you think that? Because you're okay with certain kinds of perversion, but not other kinds of perversion, or we're against perversion? This is a whole series of things that I think we need to work out amongst ourselves, because this is the foundation. This isn't just fiscal policy and spending in the United States. This is the brutal treatment of innocent children we're talking about here. This is a big deal, and it's very pervasive. We got to set some clear lines and boundaries. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
It really is disturbing. The whole thing is very disturbing, and I feel fairly desensitized to some of this stuff, because I exist in this world. You look at news headlines all the time.
Right.
But some of this stuff is just, it gets you off your center, and it's rough to look at. Anyway.
Well, it's important to remember that evil is real. A lot of these things make more sense when you acknowledge the fact that demons are real and do tempt people and cause bad things to happen, get people to do bad things. They want to tear down the natural order that Ryan was describing, the order that God established. And, we need to defend that. That's what conservatives need to do. We need to be able to stand by our principles, because you assume that people will normally just think, okay, things like pedophilia are wrong. But when people start calling that into a question and attacking, you need to rally around that. You need to defend what's right. And if your political coalition is going to surround something like tax policy, which is an important thing, but if that's going to be the basis of it, you're going to lose these much more important things, these things that make human life meaningful and worth living. And it will destroy a world that's worth raising kids in. It will destroy a world that, you can live an authentic and virtuous life and a good and noble life. They want to tear everything down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what it comes back to. This is the principle, what is the Lincoln Douglas word for it? The value. This is the value underneath the conversation we're having. And it's the same value that runs underneath a lot of other conversations. So there's a connector for you. Something you should know about that's happening this week. The Sound of Freedom released on July 4th. It runs through still in theaters. I think Angel has distributed it across the country. Go to that link that I put down, angel.com/war room. See where you can go see it. If you don't want to go see it or don't think you can, that's fine. You can pay it forward, buy a ticket for someone else if you want to, but it is not in your means to buy a movie ticket right now. They have free tickets because of other folks who've paid it forward. It's worthwhile. You should take a look at it, but support what they're doing because, again, we look at this from an immigration side a lot. We talk about the immigration side of it, the humanitarian. This is, one facet of the border crisis discussion we're having in America. But this one facet is just so incredibly important. And it's amazing to me that this is just one thing that we're talking about. We get into the issue of the free flow of drugs across our border and how that affects American families of older people making decisions. I mean, that's an incredible discussion in and of itself too. But this is just one facet of it, and this is huge. This is something I think everyone needs to understand. So when you see this, when you support this, this is a good film. This is a good OUR. I want to say OAR. It's a band. OUR. As you support OUR and get the word out, make sure and connect the dots for folks. Let them know that this is very intricately tied into our border issue. This is one of the reasons we're looking for a secure border. It's not because we have anything against immigrants. It's not because, woohoo, America's better, lock the doors. This is because when you have no system, no organized chaos, or no organized system and vetting process, this kind of chaos inevitably leads to this kind of just humanitarian, issues, this kind of evil that rears its head and thrives in the chaos. So this is a biggie. Actually, we have a question here. Someone, I don't actually know. Do we know? Are there any members of Congress right now who are right now kind of leading the charge involved in legally addressing child trafficking in the U.S.?
Not that I know of, no.
We'll have to go and look. This is that's a good question, and this is one we should hop on. Go to OURrescue.org, the website I put down. If anyone, it'll be Tim Ballard's organization. We'll probably talk about who is in the fight in Congress. So there's your answer. I don't know, but take a look at the OUR website, OURrescue.org. Because that's a good thing. There's your action item for the day. This guy had to get outside of government. By the way, yes, I see on Rumble, we've got people asking, as we wrap it up here, I'm going to pull all the links and put them over on Rumble. I forgot to do that. Rumble, our software still doesn't like it, that we're on Rumble, which YouTube doesn't either. So I'll make sure I come over here and post these real quick before we go. But there's your action item. This guy had to step out of government. Tim Ballard couldn't do anything as a DHS agent, so he had to come outside to the private sector to actually go and affect change. Call your congressman. Demand that they know about this issue. I say demand. Ask them to do something about it. Put this information in front of them. Say, have you seen this? Have you read about it? What they're doing with the Sound of Freedom movie, what Operation Underground Railroad is doing. What are you going to do about it? What can we do about it? I'm sure there's something there. Let's go and take a look. But there's your action item. Go and email your congressman and your 2 senators and put this in front of them and say, what can we do about this? Again, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. Ending slavery.
Right.
Again, I mean, we've already fought a war over this. Let's not fight a war over it again. Let's band together and actually do this, because it ought to be, except, the Democrat Party isn't, principled in my mind. It's all about control, but it ought to be an everyone issue. It ought to be an everyone issue. There's no excuse that anyone could give publicly why they wouldn't support something like this. So put this in front of your congressman. That's a good call. Yeah, that's good. I see here a few other folks. Oh, Josh Hawley, very interested in this issue. That's true. I think I have heard Josh Hawley talk about it a bit. And you're here in Missouri. We'll get familiar with Hawley much more quickly,
and I know people deal with it at the state level. I know that I think it was the governor of Arizona, maybe one state governor actually attended on one of the missions to observe, to see what the issues were going on these missions, and see the ways that they're impacting their own states. So there are people at state levels. It's just not as high profile, but there are people at state levels working on this.
Yes, there are indeed. So yeah, that's it. That's what we've got for you. And I think that's where we'll leave it today. Go and watch, go and look, go and read, go and look at all these resources. If you're on YouTube and they were over in the chat, I'll put them down in the first comment. We'll pin that. Same thing on Rumble. If you were watching on Rumble, if it didn't appear in the chat, I will put all of these resources in the first comment on Rumble, and I'll pin that up to the top. so that you can go and click website by website, video by video, and take a look at some of the resources. So join us in supporting and promoting and letting people know about the film. It's a dramatic way to get the issue in front of people. And then go and call your congressman, shoot them an email, your senators, ask them what they're doing about this issue, what can be done. And to his point, hitch up your state representative, your state senator, and start there. Ask them what's being done in your state on this issue, because cracking down and obeying the rule of law, which is something as conservatives we care so much about, is a great and honestly big first step toward starting to crack down on some of this stuff and making sure that we end it at least here and then move forward from there. So it's a big issue. It's a dark issue, but I think it's one that every American needs to know about. So let's lead the charge. Let's do it. And then Mason, I'm glad you're here leading the charge with us at Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. Looking forward to a lot of fun times ahead and good videos and Thursdays and all kinds of other stuff. And then thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being involved and for typing, working with us as we get over to Rumble too. And go and click on all the links. And we will look forward to seeing you next Thursday at noon for another Unauthorized Caucus. Head over to the website, get signed up for the emails, and you'll get that alert if you haven't done it already. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you in a week.